Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to lesson 14. In today's lesson, we're going to cover numbers in Arabic. Before I get started, I should say that this is actually one of the hardest concepts in Arabic grammar. Numbers in Arabic are complicated. And the reason for that is because Arabic actually has separate grammar rules for different numbers. So if you're looking at the numbers 1 and 2, you have to learn one set of grammatical rules. If you look at the numbers 3 through 10, you have to look at another set of grammatical rules. 11 through 19, it's another set, and so on and so on. So there's at least 5 different sets you have to memorize. And this may seem complicated, and it is, but hopefully you can use this video as a place you can come back to anytime you need to refresh your knowledge of the grammatical rules. So let's go ahead and get started, inshallah. Let's start with the words 1 and 2. The words in Arabic for 1 and 2 are ahadun for 1 and ithnan for 2. Now that's if you're describing a masculine noun. With a feminine noun, you have to use ihda for 1 and ithnatan for 2. Notice ahadun becomes ihda, ithnan becomes ithnatan. Now, as it turns out, these words are actually not as common as you might think, and that is because the numbers 1 and 2 can be actually conveyed without using these words whatsoever. How do you do that? Well, remember in Arabic, you change the noun depending on if it's singular, dual, or plural. So if you use the singular form, it automatically means one item. And if you use the dual form, it automatically means 2 items. So if I say muslimun, that's one Muslim. I don't have to use the word ahadun. Similarly, if I want to say 2 Muslims, I can just say musliman. I don't need to use I don't have to use ithnan. But sometimes these words are included for extra emphasis. Or oftentimes, most of the time, they're actually used by themselves. So if you just see the word ahadun, it's being used to mean anyone or someone. And ahadun is very common in that meaning. And you'll also see sometimes the word wahidun, which is the adjectival form, which just means single. Just like in English you have one, but then you also have single. In Arabic you have ahadun, but you also have wahidun. Okay, so let's move on to the numbers 3 through 10, because these are very common. So we'll go through and we'll say the numbers, and we'll just count from 3 through 10. And we'll start with this column here, which is the words that you use when you're describing a feminine noun. So a noun such as tawilatun, which means table, or sayyaratun, which means caravan or car in modern Arabic. Let's read these numbers. Thalathun means 3, arba'un 4, khamsun 5, sittun 6, sab'un 7, thamanin 8, tis'un 9, and ashrun 10. What about if I'm using a masculine noun? Then I use the following words. 3 is thalathatun, arba'atun 4, khamsatun 5, sittatun 6, sab'atun 7, thamaniyatun 8, tis'atun 9, ashratun 10. Okay, so let's see, how do we actually combine this with a noun? So it turns out if you use one of these words, any of the numbers from 3 through 10, with a noun, the following noun has to be plural and it has to be in the majroor case. And you might have noticed something, which is that the form of the number that I use is of the opposite gender of the noun. So if I'm trying to say, let's say 3 days in Arabic, the word for 3 is thalathun or thalathatun. Which one do we use? Well, you have to look at the singular version of the noun that you're using. So ayyamun is the plural, but the singular form is yawm. Yawm. Now yawm, is it masculine or is it feminine? Turns out it's masculine. Yawm is masculine. So we're going to use the feminine looking version of the number, thalathatun. So the way to say 3 days in Arabic is thalathatu ayyamin. Thalathatu ayyamin. So what we're actually doing here is we're using the possession construction. So thalathu acts like the possessed. That's why it doesn't have a tanween and it doesn't have an al. And ayyamin acts like the possessor. So it almost like I'm saying three of days. So thalathatu ayyamin. This is why it's in the majroor case. So notice how each of these rules are being applied here. The following noun is plural, it's in the majroor case, and the number is the opposite gender. We'll take a look at one more example. Sab'u samawatin. Sama'un is the singular form, and it's feminine. So we're going to use the masculine version of the number, which is sab'un. So sab'u samawatin. Sab'u samawatin. The 7 heavens. Alright, now let's change gears again. So now we're going to the words from 11 through 19. I won't read all of these words. You can read them yourself. They're basically just the word for 3 through 9. From 1 through 9. Followed by the word ashra or ashara or ashrata. Alright, so if it's a feminine noun, it's ihda ashrata for 11. Ithnata ashrata for 12. Thalatha ashrata for 13, and so on. And you only see the first few actually appear in the Quran. Not all of these show up. It's mostly just the first two. For a masculine noun, ahada ashara for 11, ithna ashara for 12, thalathata ashara for 13, and so on. So what are the grammatical rules here? It turns out now the following noun is now singular. It's not plural, it's singular. And it's in mansub case, not majroor case. So this is why numbers in Arabic can be confusing, because the rules just change up on you like that. So the second grammatical rule you should remember is that the ashara agrees with the gender of the noun. So if we're using, for example, a feminine noun, you'll notice that we're using ashrata, whereas for a masculine noun, it's ashara. So for a feminine noun, it's the feminine version of the word 10, and for the masculine noun, it's the masculine version of the word 10. Similarly, ahada also agrees, ithna also agrees. However, these later numbers, 3 through 9, they're the opposite gender as the noun. And so let's take a look at a couple of examples. So the first example here is ihda ashrata madinatan. Ihda ashrata madinatan. So Madina is city. We're using the singular form. We're not using the plural of Madina is mudunun, but we're not using that. And we're using a feminine version of ahadun. We're using ihda, and we're using the feminine version of ashrata. So ihda ashrata madinatan. Similarly, if I was to say 12 springs, ithnata ashrata aynan. Now you practice, so try saying something like 12 stars. This is from the Quran, or 12 planets. And the word for planet or star here is kawkaban. Kawkaban. So how would I say 12 planets? Well, I'm using a masculine noun, so it's ithna ashara kawkaban. And you can practice with some of these other numbers as well, although like I mentioned, they don't appear that commonly in the Quran. Alright, so let's change gears again and now go through the numbers from 20 through 99. And here, it's mostly the multiples of 10 that you see appear in the Quran. So we'll just see a couple of examples of that. But I'll mention the words first. Ashuruna is 20, Thalathuna is 30, Arba'una is 40, Khamsuna is 50, Sittuna is 60, Sab'una is 70, Thamanuna is 80, Tis'una is 90. Now, if these look like the sound masculine plural to you, una, good job, you're right. And they can actually change depending on the case of the word. So if the word is in majroor case, it can change from arba'una to arba'ina or khamsuna to khamsina, just like the sound masculine plural can. Alright, now it turns out for these words, the following noun is also singular and mansub. So it's the same as before, singular and mansub. But this time, there's no gender involved. Thank goodness. Thank God. So regardless of the next word, we just have to use the same form of the number. So we can take a look at a couple of examples. 30 months, ثلاثون شهرا. ثلاثون شهرا. Okay, what about this next word here? This next phrase, وخمسون قرية. What does this mean? قرية means village. خمسون قرية, and 50 villages. And 50 villages. Okay. Alright, and finally, let's talk about the words for 100, 200, 1000, and so on. So the words that you need to learn are mi'atun, which means 100, and alfun, which means 1000. Okay, and again, this applies for both genders. There's no gender, the gender of the noun doesn't change the gender or the word used for the number. But the following noun now has to be singular and majroor, not mansub. It has to be singular and majroor. So let's take a look at a couple of examples. Mi'atu aamin. Mi'atu is mi'atun. So it's the same possession construction that we saw for the words 3 through 10. That's being used here. So this here is the possessed. This here is the possessor. That's why this doesn't have a tanween or anything like that. And this is in the majroor case. Same thing, alfu sanatin. Sana and am both mean year. So here this is 1000 years. And if I want to say 200 or 2000, each of these words simply you can turn them into dual forms. So mi'atan, and I believe that appears in the Quran as well, and alfan. I'm not sure if that appears in the Quran. But that's it. Those are all of the rules for numbers, and it's completely alright if you didn't catch all of those rules in the first time around. You can listen to this video again. And actually the good thing, alhamdulillah, is that when you're reading the Quran, you know that the grammatical rules are going to be correct. So you don't actually have to necessarily know all of the grammatical rules. We've covered them so for the sake of completeness, so you understand everything. But when you're reading the Quran, you really just have to recognize the numbers. You just have to recognize, okay, arba'atu. What does that mean? That means 4. Okay? So let's take a look at a few examples. And I'll have you try to take a look at these first. So pause the video and then I'll give you the answers. Number 1, arba'atu shuhada. Arba'atu shuhada. Shuhada is a plural of shahid. So 4 witnesses. 4 witnesses. Tis'u ayatin. Tis'u ayatin. 9 verses. And here you can confirm that the gender of the number is the opposite of the gender of the singular of the noun. أحد عشر كوكبا. This is 11 planets. This is 11 planets. أربعين سنة. So we saw sanatan before, it means year. أربعين is 40 in the mansub case or the majroor case. So we see here أربعين سنة, 40 years. And then we'll end with a little bit of a compound example here, a little bit complicated example. ثلاثة وأربعون كتابا. I don't believe this is from the Quran. This is just, I want to show you a complex example. ثلاثة وأربعون كتابا. 43 books. You'll see the 40 here. See the 43 books. And you'll notice, if you think about it, that you'll notice that أربعون, it doesn't change gender. It's always أربعون. ثلاثة, however, is in the feminine form because كتابا is masculine. But again, even if you didn't catch those grammatical rules, it's okay. You just have to recognize the numbers. Alright? So go through this lesson. I recommend repeating it again just so it's completely clear and you have a refresher and you understand it clearly, inshallah. Alright, Jazakallah khair. Thank you for listening. As always, please find one other person to share this video with so that everyone can benefit, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.